We'd like to welcome our audience to the Value Cultures podcast. Daryl Ogden, co-founder of Value Cultures. And today we're really excited to welcome Brian Fargo, who is a true pioneer in the games industry. He's the founding studio head of inXile, which was originally a very successful indie studio that parlayed its success into being acquired by Xbox late last decade. Brian is one of the most innovative, most energetic, most passionate game developers that I have the pleasure to know, and somebody who, leads his studio with enormous energy and passion. And he's one of the creators of new IP in the games industry as well. So we're just really delighted to welcome Brian to the pod. Good morning, Brian.
Good morning to you, and thank you for having me aboard.
It's always great to see you. You and I, we often have occasion to meet at various Xbox leadership convenings, and always look forward to just catching up with you, because every time I speak with you, I get a jolt of energy about game development, and that never fails. And so I'm always, I got to go find Brian and find out what he's up to and what's new for him, because I know that there will be something new always. And it's really fun to get a chance to talk to you today.
Yeah, no, there's no lack of new going on these days. It's I sometimes describe my day like if you've ever gone to a comedy show and you've just like had a great time and laughed all night, and then you got home and you can't remember one of the jokes. That seems like my day sometimes. Like, I know a lot happened.
Right. It was fun. It was
fun to recite them all.
Right. Yeah. So Brian, when we've had occasion to talk many times over, I don't know, the last 6 or 7 years. And I'm always struck by just this wealth of knowledge and experience that you have in the industry, and all of the different stories and experiences that you've had. But, I don't think that I've ever heard very directly how it is that you fell in love with games and how you became a game developer, some time ago, right? We always love to start our conversations with our guests and just tell us their story in games. So I wonder if you could share that with us. How did this career happen?
I'm sort of fortunate. It's almost like I was training for it starting at 6 years old. All of my interests all kind of came together for this. I was a huge movie buff. And back in the day, I grew up in Whittier, and it used to be that you'd have a double feature. Like, you would never go to a single movie. That was crazy. And my parents, they'd drop me off on a Saturday, and I'd watch two, and then I'd come home. And that was like, I used to take notes of all the films that I couldn't even remember, there'd be so many. But it was all the Monster, those magazines. I forget, Monster was one of the magazines, I think, and there were other horror ones. And then there was Heavy Metal magazine, comic books, collecting comic books, reading a lot of fiction, Piers Anthony. Yes, Tolkien, of course, Zelazny, that sort of thing. And so then here comes computers. My first exposure was on a mainframe at school, so there wasn't even a CRT. It was just a printer. You just had to print everything out. You had to sneak in after. Well, they would let you sneak in, so to speak, to play with the computer. Then it was the coin op. I went crazy for Dragon's Lair and Space Invaders and the football game with the wheel, and I was totally into that. I got the Magnavox Odyssey machine. I love that. The Atari VCS. But the light didn't go on until I got an Apple II. Thank God my parents bought that for me, which was no small investment at the time. And that was the first time, like, okay, now I get how behind the scenes what's going on, because it just magically appeared at that point. And so I started teaching myself how to program, and that was when I started to understand things. And so that was really how I got into it all, and then that was the light bulb that turned on.
It's interesting in talking with so many game developers over the last 15 years or so. For me, so many of them, the story begins with a parent buying a computer, right? And then it's like, well, what's going on inside this computer? It's the very curious folks. They weren't satisfied with just the computer experience. They wanted to know, like, what's behind the curtain? Where's the Wizard of Oz here, right? And then we're going to create the Wizard of Oz. So how old were you when this computer was purchased and you turned on in that way?
I was probably about 16 years old, right around then. And and at the time, remember, there was no internet, so you couldn't turn to for that. You had I don't know what was it, Byte magazine maybe. There was a couple magazines that supported it. There was nothing at the bookstore. I remember when they first opened the computer section of the bookstore. That was like amazing. So you really had to seek out your information. It kind of in the community. There were people that got together. So I would go to those kind of get-togethers and try to learn from them. Or the book that came with the Apple that Wozniak put up, that little red book, that was like the Bible. I tried to understand and parse all of that.
So when did it start moving from a hobby or just a passion? When did you begin to turn it into a career or into a job?
Well, let's see. I guess, well, it was such a small industry in the beginning that it was sort of almost hard to imagine that you could make a career out of it.
Right.
So, I was trying to learn how to program. And so I figured worst case, maybe I'd learn how to program. I mean, it was this little tiny business that nobody was, making much. But you started to see products come out from the old Scott Adams Adventures and Sierra Online and those kinds of old companies. And I forget when Broderbund came on, and I remember playing a lot. Oh my God, I played so much wizardry from Surtech, and I remember they wrote that in Pascal. I don't know what is Pascal, and so I guess some of it, I think like other people, you get to a point where you play it enough, and you go, I could do that. And so there's like a tipping point. Where I hit that on the continuum, I'm not sure, but it was probably around 18 years old because I remember my first company I ever did was called Saber Software. I did a game called The Demon's Forge. Wasn't that great. It was okay, but I did it, and I finished it, and I got it out there, and that's a whole story in itself. And I think the lesson there was finishing something. I always say it's a lot more fun to finish things or to start them than to finish them. And
Yes.
and so I actually finished it, and then there was a series of events that I was hired to be a VP at a company when I was 20 years old. They had money. A lot of these Stanford graduates were starting a company, and they had no idea. So I was running development for them. That was again so many stories. But then I started Interplay when I was 20 years old, and say, you know what, I'm not only am I going to just do I think, well, I could just do it better myself in terms of game making, but I thought I could just do a company better myself. And
Yeah.
so
Right.
I started it very young. My vice president, if I wanted a beer, would have to buy it for me since he was over 21, and I was in early.
That's being in early, right? And
Yeah.
so you were obviously, a creative guy right from the start, and you picked it up pretty, I'm not going to say easily, because I'm sure you worked hard at it, but it came naturally to you, it sounds like, that you grokked it, early, and, you were able to become pretty advanced pretty early. And so you're getting right at one of the themes of what I think we want to talk about today is there's this not tension, but this kind of dualism that you've been managing all the way back to being 20, which is I'm running a company and I'm also making a game or making games, right?
Yep.
And sometimes those things go together and sometimes they're separate from one another. In your case, you've basically kept them together your whole career. My sense is that you have been a leader of a company and a leader of game development concurrently for a long time now. And that's a deliberate choice that you've made. But you made a judgment that you could be a company leader, but you never wanted to get away from actually making games. Some people ladder up to executive roles and then they get away from the game making in a way, but you never have done that, have you?
Yeah, well, I didn't get in the games business to be an executive.
Right.
So while I've managed it, it's been more that I had to than anything. And so the creative was always my passion. But unless there was money coming in, you could want to be creative all day long. I was like an interpreter sometimes, I swear, where the creative people would talk or the engineering people would talk, and then the business people would be like, what are they talking about? And vice versa. So I could really kind of straddle those two worlds. And so, yeah, it served me well because I had to wear those two hats. And I also had to wear a marketing hat too, which was,
Yeah.
sort of not, hey, I have a crazy idea, but to start thinking about the marketplace. Now, some of these skills I got better at over time. I won't say it 19 years old, I was, thinking this advance on everything, but certainly those are the things that kind of served me well and helped me survive all these years, just to have a little bit of those different hats on. But yeah, I ended up when I was in high school, there was a thing where you had to get in front of the class and give an oral report. And I'm like, I wouldn't get in front. I was like too introvert. I wasn't going to get up front. She says, "You'll get an F." I said, "I'll take the F." And um, and then later, as my company, Interplay got to be 500 people. So I would talk to when there were 10 people, easy. Then it was 20. Then it was 50. It was 100. All of a sudden, I'm public speaking, but just by what
Right.
choice did I? What am I going to not ever talk to my people? So
Right.
there was such kind of an evolution that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did you learn how to run a company? How did you learn how to do that? Did you have mentors? Did you have people that taught you things, or did you just do it, organically and by trial and error?
I guess a lot of it organically. I wish I had a mentor at the time, but I was always a keen listener in terms of
Hmm.
hearing. I remember when we started doing business with Electronic Arts in the beginning and Activision in the beginning. I was actually one of the few developers doing work for both of them because they hated each other. And so it was this kind of funny, you're either with them or you're with us kind of thing. But I would hear, whether it was Tim Mott or Trip Hawkins, Bing Gordon, all these different people, and I was learning a lot from them at the same time. And I would hear the psychology that was going into making some of the games, and I went, "Oh, wow," really just grasping onto that right away. So whether it was design philosophy or it was business, I was just, I don't know, I was always leaning in everywhere I could so I could keep doing this. I mean, really, at the end of the day, that's all it's about for me. A lot of people will say, "Hey, when are you going to retire?" I'm like, I don't really want to retire. I mean, I don't. For me, I love my craft, and if I love my craft, I don't want to stop doing it, and I see so many ways to improve upon it.
And so, did you ever feel like you were going to have to make a choice between running, Interplay at that time, maybe inXile now, and game development, or was that a choice that you wouldn't even consider? Like, it wasn't even in your consciousness that you would choose between those things?
I never felt like I always just had to do what had to be done, whatever that would be. So, early on, I was 100% creative, and then the business grew. And then all of a sudden, I mean, at the peak of Interplay, 500 employees, I'm running a public company. You think I'm involved in creative decisions at that time? No, I'm dealing with shareholders, I'm dealing with analysts, I'm
Yeah.
doing road shows, I'm doing everything. I'd go into creative meetings, but I'm there and then I leave, and then I can't really sort of make things stick that I cared about. And then finally, when I left Interplay, it was like, okay, let's get back to why I got in this business to begin with. And then
Yeah.
with inXile, I started creeping back up the chain again to where I was negotiating deals, Kickstarter, raising money, doing whatever. Not as bad as Interplay was, but certainly I'm starting to get away from it more. And now, full circle, Microsoft buys us, and now I'm back to why I got into the business to begin with, which is to focus on the creative. And I should say, and developing creative teams and other really brilliant people. I guess one of the things that served me well is that I was good at spotting talent, and I was good at creating sort of a vision of where we were going with that product and managing people towards that thing. And so anything else was a distraction. I stopped programming because right away I met programmers who were much smarter than me. I went, okay, note to self. I could just tell they were wired differently. They were just like, okay, I'm okay, but I'm never going to be that good. And so I was able to understand a lot about the different disciplines. And then the last part was I'm super persistent. So that is absolutely critical because you got to be pushing and pushing and pushing. And then having Interplay and throughout my career, I mean, there's been a half a dozen, where the comet almost hit the earth and wiped us out, this close to being out.
You mentioned the acquisition by Microsoft and Xbox, and we want to dig into that a little bit more. But there are some people that might have said, "Hey, this is a great opportunity for me to go do something else," or like smell the roses with the reward of an acquisition. But you actually said, "Hey, now I'm liberated, but not liberated to go do something else. I'm liberated to go do the thing that I was put on earth to do, which is make games."
Yeah, no, I have friends, and I think even my mom might have said, "Time to smell the roses." But I'm like, well, now I get to throw 100% of my creative energy into not just the medium of video games, but everything, which is reading books from literary authors on
Yeah.
how they manage good writing, or Creativity Inc. and managing the creative process, and all that bandwidth I was putting towards those other things, I now put towards this. And like I said earlier, if you think about, maybe some great directors, for example, I'm pretty sure that Ridley Scott has enough money to quit. And what is he, 88 years old, and he's still making films? Clint Eastwood's 90, still making films. So I think you're going to pry the camera from their cold, dead fingers before they stop.
They're not like Quentin Tarantino, who's declared, famously he's making 10 and then he's done, right? And supposedly he's nearing the end, right? But you look at more of the Ridley Scott, Clint Eastwood model. You're going to take this game controller out of my cold hands, right?
I'm not
um,
100% convinced he's only going to do 10 either. It
yeah.
could be marketing, and it could be, well, this product, I'm coming out of a retirement to do my 11th. I could already hear it. So we'll see.
He's
We'll
been
see.
known to do a sequel or two, so he could probably create, just like, oh, it's one thing, like Kill Bill, right?
I just read
So,
he wants to do a cartoon series on Kill Bill. So well, I guess that doesn't count. So yeah.
yeah, that's right. Over the years, I have gotten to know you and a lot of your fellow travelers who are also studio heads that in this period between 2017 and 19 were acquired by Microsoft. And, people like Matt Booty were obviously, instrumental in making that happen, Xbox and Microsoft. And this collection of studios that inXile is part of, it's an extraordinary group of creators and game developers. But one of the things that I think is a through line across all of my conversations with those folks is it's great to be part of Xbox, great to be part of Microsoft. It creates all sorts of opportunities for us, great platform and so on. And we want to be docked in with Xbox. We want to be aligned, but we also want to maintain the integrity of our studios. We want to maintain our culture and so on. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the culture that you've built over many years now at inXile and how you have work to retain that culture, even as you become part of the Xbox family of studios.
Microsoft and Matt Booty specifically have also said, "Hey, we want you to keep your culture." I mean, we still have
Yep.
our own emails. It's little things like that. I guess I'm pretty strong-willed about this stuff, and one of the things I tried to do very much early on, like first in the beginning, Microsoft was sending me a lot of stuff to, for me, which was noise, but I wanted to be a good corporate partner. And so I'm trying to like look at it, absorb it, and Matt's like, you don't have to worry about all of it. Just we're running our company. I have my OpEx budget. I manage it. They may have a layoff and we may have a bonus. So don't equate that. So I tried to reinforce that over and over and over again. And it's been successful. I remember I would get often when Microsoft would do things, I would get like, what are your people saying? I'm like, nothing. And they, well, aren't they worried about it? I'm like, no, they're not really thinking about it. And some of it too, for me, having been, been in it for a long time and had all those near-death experiences and had no safety net whatsoever, running a company, when you're running your own small company, I think the hardest part is there's a spreadsheet that shows when you're out of business all the time.
Yes.
So you're looking
Yes.
at it. And I don't know whether it's 90 days or 9 months from now, but it's always there. And even if it's 9 months away, you can't wait till 6 months out. You have to always be panicking now. So you're in like this panic mode situation all the time. Now with Microsoft, they've taken that away. So for me, everything is okay. Like I really don't get wound up about stuff that other people do, even though it might be frustrating. It's like, I feel like I've done too many tours of Vietnam to really get too wound up about this. You're dealing with a big company and they have their ways. And I can assure you, having been an entrepreneur trying to survive all those years, despite what seems illogical, I'm okay with it because I've just been through so much. So that's how I've tried to keep the relationship in perspective for my people, and also let them know, don't get worried about, don't focus on them, please.
Yeah. When you have as many tours of duty as you've had, as you suggested with the Vietnam metaphor, you can't get bent out of shape out of stuff that is a molehill by comparison, right? Just not not worth it. And so this allows you kind of paradoxically to do your best work as a game developer, doesn't it? Because you're not getting distracted. You're keeping your eyes, straight ahead on what's important to you, what matters, what's meaningful to you and your team. And, it's funny, probably of all of those studios that joined at that time, my perspective is that you guys do as good a job of anybody as just keeping focused on what's ahead of you. What I think is directly ahead of you right now, and you have a game that you're working on right now that was announced in the 2023 Xbox Showcase, Clockwork Revolution. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about that game. And what I think I'm particularly interested in, Brian, is, and this would again be true of the Undead Labs and the Obsidians and the Ninja Theories of the world, is post acquisition, you're able to make games that fulfill your studio identity, the kind of games that you love to make, but are often able to make games that might be more ambitious because of the support, because of the backing of Microsoft and so on. And so that turns out to be a nice combination at times. But I wonder if you could talk about Clockwork Revolution and how it fulfills what inXile is all about as a studio in terms of the style of the game it is, the style of gameplay, but also extends it, takes it forward through innovations and so on.
Well, I think, I wanted to just focus on one game. The line I read recently was like, in an age of infinite content, this is not the phrase, I'm saying it wrong, but mediocrity is invisible. And so more than ever these days, and it can't just be like, of course you need to make a good game, but it's got to be really special. And then the other thing that we've learned from all the entertainment audiences, they respect ambition. I mean, if there's some part of it that's ambitious, it doesn't have to be GTA 6 ambition, but you better have your own version of that. And so we try to do some ambitious things, and I think people have reacted to that. And I think the other part for me was that, as I've matured, and not just me, but my people and watching what people like to watch on television. I mean, the shows they love is Game of Thrones, it's Killing Eve, it's Snatch, it's Sexy Beast, Ozark, or White Lotus.
Yeah.
I mean, they do crazy stuff in those shows, stuff that I wouldn't do in the game, but those are the top shows. And so my only point on that is that I've always treated my audience, just assume they're super smart. Even when I was young, our audience was like 18 years old, 17 years old, but we would always assume that they were smart. And even more so now, and they're not 18, they're probably closer to 40. And so I'm looking at the media that I'm consuming and loving. Mobland, by the way, was unbelievable. If you haven't seen Guy Ritchie's latest one, I want to make stuff that we like. And so that's where kind of that edgy, mature writing style came from. It's not coming from, we want to do shock value. Like, that's not like the thing. It's like, how did they really talk, and how authentic does it feel? Does it feel like real dialogue, or does it feel performative? Does it feel like a writer is just trying to get some thing across? When you talk with people in real life and they're saying things for effect, smart people see right through it. I tell people, don't do it. Don't ever try to speak from your heart. Do your thing. Say whatever you want. Be wrong. Who cares? Just don't try to say something for effect, because smart people see through it. And so I think the writing is the same way. I want something that feels authentic. I mean, that's a part of what we do in our writer's room. And we mentioned Tarantino earlier, and one of the techniques he does, which I love, is he talks about how his characters have these side conversations about, what was it, Royale with cheese, okay? It's like, in real life, we do not talk about the plot 24 hours a day. We talk about the other things. And those other things are both entertaining and authentic. All these things I've been either observing, learning, taking in, that's what we're trying to make work with Clockwork. In addition to we have a core audience that we feel like we have a pretty good handle on in terms of what they like and what they don't like. And we never lose sight. Like, you have to make sure your core audience loves what you're doing. Only then can you go broader than that and have kind of the big success. And the example I give is, you see the biggest stars in the world, they go down to Comic-Con. I mean, that's a hardcore group of people. They're dressed up like the characters. But boy, it's Tom Cruise going to Comic-Con because he knows, Robert Downey Jr. because they know. So you got to keep the core audience in your mind at all times, but at the same time, the expansion can come from looking at other mediums and what's working or what you're enjoying yourself. And then it's coming from someplace right. And so,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, we know it's a steampunk role-playing game, and the reactivity is the thing that we focus on a great. That's what people really gravitate towards, which is when they make a decision and it actually matters. Because when they make decisions and it doesn't matter, it all just falls apart for them. And that's a lot of work because you're creating a lot of content that people wouldn't see. And also, if you're too good at it, if you're too smooth at it, you won't even notice it. It'll just seem natural. So we have to actually bend over backwards to surface that you actually did something that changed something. But because it was so organic, it just weaved right in. But if you weren't thinking about it, you might have missed the fact that now this person's wouldn't have happened, or this would happen, or now all the statues are different, or now it's raining all the time. Like, you might just not even notice that you made all these massive changes.
In one of our conversations that I remember it quite vividly, it was in New York City in 2020. This is a big group of people, great game leaders and so on. And I said, Brian, what are you up to? And you were experimenting really significantly already, thinking about, using AI in game development, but using AI in game development in a very, I would say, in a very human way, in a very human oriented way. I wonder, you have been somebody who has spoken publicly about using AI in games, but you've also spoken really passionately and publicly about ethical use of AI in games, right? And I think this balancing act that so many game developers are trying to strike right now, trying to stay on the innovative edge of things, but also reminding ourselves that games are made, they're describing often human experiences. They are about human experience. And so the humanity in games is so important. So I just wonder if you could talk a little bit about how you're thinking about it. Because I've always, in our conversations, I've just been struck by how deliberate and intentional you are about it. And I think my impression is you're thinking about it the right way.
It's a super sensitive topic, and for good reason. I mean, I talk to each one of my disciplines and say, here's how I think there's some things we could do. Like, I mean, we spend so much time. So our games are, let's call them 750,000 words, and then you have the Confluence documents that support it all. That's probably another 1.3 million words. So we got 2 million words. I mean, I think that's more words than all of the Game of Thrones seasons all added up together. I mean, the Bible's like 800,000 words. To say that we can keep track of that is insane. And my people say they spend like 25% of their time just tracking things down. Well, I don't think anybody has any problem with saying, hey, here's this huge data set. Like, I just did a query this morning, and I want to say, okay, tell me all the conversations that have a skill use in them and how many times that skill use is used. And so, like, because I'm very much into ratios and how much things are used. So, for example, if it looks across all of our conversations, and I'm making this one up, and lockpick only got used one time, and it's a skill that people put into their character, we might go, you know what, we need more lockpicks in the game. But
right.
Right, to do that by hand is just really impossible. Like, they're trying to find a particular character in Blueprint. Where is it? Instead of spending an hour looking around trying to find it. So because there's mass amounts of data for them to go through, we're trying to make it using AI so they can just find stuff. To me, it's like, let the sculptor sculpt, but don't make them make the clay from scratch every single time. To me, it's empowering it. And I think of them in buckets about human nuance and non-human nuance. Like, the guy's like, oh, if it could help me clean up my motion capture data, great. But anything that involves human nuance needs humans. That curation cycle is everything. And really, if you rely on AI to be your creative partner, and just like that, you're gonna get average. I mean, you're gonna get that's what it does. It's training on scale of the average person. And back to Tarantino, I think you could give people AI movie making tools all day long, and they're not going to do a film as good as him. He just has an approach that works. He knows good dialogue when he writes it and hears it, and he's just better at it. And so give people all the tools they want, and it's not happening. I get the fear, and I think it's founded, but I think there are some good parts to help all I want to do is help my creative people do the things they enjoy the most more, and not the drudgery of tracking things down and that sort of stuff. Like if I could help them do the fun stuff more, I think that's a win.
That's just what we were looking for, Brian, that kind of range across AI and how you're being thoughtful and intentional about it and providing guidance and leadership, to your studio about it. You have seen and done everything that there is to see and do in games. I think we'd be probably hard pressed to raise something with you and you'd say, yeah, I wasn't aware that that happened in the industry. You've seen and done it all. This is one of these moments in time where the industry's under a lot of pressure. There are many disruptive contributors, to the pressure the industry's under. And so given the state of the industry right now, given the complexities of leadership and what it means to lead a studio right now, how are you thinking about joining those things together in terms of your approach to leadership and your understanding of where the industry is and navigating those very challenging, difficult waters?
I read a great article the other day. Probably tweet, but it was a long one.
It counts as an article today.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. We goldfish have our attention span beat by several seconds now. So if you want to go back 100 years, it's all been about vying for attention. Like there's a great book called The Attention Merchants. And it started off with newspapers, and then they'd make stuff up. Look at the telescope. There's men on Mars. They'd make things up, but they'd sell the papers, and then the TVs, radio, the internet, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's always been about vying for attention at a very 50,000-foot view. We're now entering an era that the noise is insane, and it's going like this. Matt will talk about, hey, TikTok's taking our attention share, gambling's taking our attention share. AI is going to is taking attention share, meaning, kids can already one prompt a game about them and their family. The game's not that great, but it's very personalized, so they're having a great time. And then you're also vying against people. I think it was over half the people on Steam play games that are 6 years or older. I do the same thing. And I know you don't talk about games, but I play Hearthstone Battlegrounds every day. Why? I know the rules. I know when they play it. I'm pretty good. Why? Yeah. I mean, I enjoy it. I love and it's competitive. It's always different. So you've got all of this going on. And now, so here comes AI with smaller developers will be using AI. There's going to be a lot. There's just going to be so much stuff. And so it was called the death of average. And so you better be doing something that's pretty red hot. The old days where people could go, yeah, it was good. No, it was solid. Yeah, they checked the boxes. I liked it. You're gone in a week. It's got to be more like, but they better play the game and go, that was fucking awesome. I mean, like if you're not getting that kind of emotion to it, I don't know. And so all we can do is just lean into what we're doing, take it super passionate, and just leave it all on the field, man. I mean, that's all we can do. Because Microsoft, they'll have their summits, and I always learn things, and I enjoy it, and I love learning from other fields and that sort of thing. But sometimes they'll talk about, I don't know, they're going to change Game Pass pricing or whatever. I'm like, that's not my worry. I always say I'm on location on a desert island filming. That's all that matters. If I'm making a show for Netflix, do I really care if they're going to start going ad-based or not allow you to stream from your phone anymore? Whatever is happening at Netflix, no, I've got to be making the best show possible. That's all I can do at the end of the day. And so for me, we've got to be hyper-focused on that. That's all you can do. And you better stand out at the end to be like, okay, they did put their heart and soul into it. You can feel it. And I'm entertained, not at an intellectual level, like, that was very well done. No, I'm actually getting authentic human emotion from you as you're going through the experience.
Yeah.
You're laughing, you're morally, I'm not sure what to do. And so I think the key on any of this, on all entertainment, I guess, is whether you're getting an emotional reaction from someone. Because if you're not, you failed. And it can't be an intellectualized sort of emotional where you look back and it was good. No, it's got to be in the moment. Some films you watch them, you're glued. I mean, a good film, a good 2-hour film, you're actually hypnotized by the film. That's why like that. And a bored one, you're moving around in your seat because
Right.
you're not hypnotized.
My takeaway is, and this has been true for you for a long time now, probably since you created Interplay and entered the industry, it's always about keeping the main thing, isn't it? It's keep the main thing, whatever that main thing is. And the main thing for you is making innovative, provocative, emotionally engaging, and visceral games that people fall in love with.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be thinking, if I was to start a company from scratch today, would I launch my company with this game? And if your answer can't be yes, then you should think of something else.
I love that. So, Brian, this is a great conversation, just what we were hoping for, but I can't let you go before you tell us what's got your attention in games right now. So we ask all of our guests to share what we call a level up game with us, a game that they've fallen in love with recently. And we love to hear about the blockbusters and so on, but we'd love to hear also about games that are, maybe a little bit off center, and this is a way to draw attention to them. So what's the game that you've fallen in love with recently?
I got to mention one, which is just because Red Dead 2 was one of the better gaming
Yeah.
experiences I had. I just thought it was a masterpiece. And I rarely finish whatever 100-hour games these days. But on the smaller side, I'm a real sucker for the limbo type games. So like Little
Mm.
Nightmares or Little Nightmares 3. I just love those types of product. I put time into that. Again, I mentioned Hearthstone, and that's not small, but I put a lot of time into that one. What's the new one? I have that new system that Microsoft just put out. So funny, the portable. I love that thing. And what is it? Ballbit? I think it's Ballbit. It's it's like Breakout meets sort of with another genre where you're always moving forward. So
Right.
that's a little title. Well, who knows? Maybe it's big now. I'm not sure what's big and small. But the truthful answer is I spend a lot of my time again, Mafia was not a big hit, but I did love that, but it was from Take-Two. I'm trying to think of like small titles because I played Whispers from the Star. I guess that was a little one because that was all about how you were having conversation there was an old Apple game called Lifeline, which I always thought was fascinating, where you would say stuff and it would report back to you. I think they launched it with the Apple Watch, and it was like it was almost like a not appointment based, but you would wait. You'd say, go up on the hill. And then an hour later, go, I'm here. Now here's what I saw. And you try to keep this little astronaut alive. And Whispers from the Star was like an AI version of that, where I could talk to the AI through my microphone, have a conversation, and then she would get back to me. And I thought, I just wanted to see what that felt like. So a lot of my gameplay has to be like, okay, if someone's trying something new, I want to just see what it feels like. And I also spend a lot of time watching streamers play games because it's more efficient for me to watch them because they got it to speed. They're good. I know what's going on. And I also get to watch the chat room and see what they're saying about things. So for me, my game playing is probably more academic these days than anything. And then I play my competitors. They come out. It's funny. I did an interview recently. I was messing around with Claude. I called it Claude 33. I meant Claire 33. But I put time into that. Everybody's raving about it. So hey, let's see what's great about it. What is it? Oh, they nailed the music. Oh, look at the physicality of the acting. I'll kind of be breaking it down about like why is it resonating? What do they love about it? Kingdom Come Deliverance, same thing. Or what don't people like about it? So a lot of my play is like, I guess it's not like a movie where I could just in 2 hours I'm done. And so I try to learn from the industry as much as I can.
As is typical of you, it's an embarrassment of riches, and I can see you picking up signal and picking up things that are going to end up being inspiration for future inXile games, and that's going to be good for all of us. Brian, thank you so much for this. This was again the conversation that we imagined having with you. It was a lot of fun as always, and we're just really appreciative for your time today.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. My pleasure.